Alright guys, well, I'm making this video literally like 15 minutes after I made the last one because as I was actually closing the video and getting it ready to post on YouTube, the word came over the wire. Bryce Harper just signed with the Philadelphia Phillies for 13 years, $330 million. Wow, that's a lot of money. A third of $1 billion, pretty much. Ridiculous. Say what you will about Bryce Harper, about his legacy, about his conduct on and off the field. You know, there's some things going on there. Say what you want about the consistency of his numbers. The kid puts up numbers, and in fantasy, that's all that matters, is his numbers. It doesn't matter how many World Series he wins. It doesn't matter how many MVPs he wins. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. All that matters is cold, hard numbers, and he's going from Washington to Philadelphia, and Citizens Bank Park is a bandbox. It's 330 down the line in right field. So he's going to hit a lot of home runs. He averages, his 162 game average is 32 home runs a year up until this point in his career. I feel he's going to increase that by at least 25%. I think he's going to go and start hitting the 40 home run range just about every year because he's probably going to hit 20 to 25 home runs in Citizens Bank Park by himself. So it just depends on what he does on the road. So I think he's probably like a mid to late first round pick now in redraft leagues. I still don't think he's at the level of a Trout, a Nolan Arenado, of Jose Ramirez, maybe even a Paul Goldschmidt because they hit for higher averages, or Jose Altuve. He's going to have less power than Harper, but he checks all the other boxes. He steals bases. He gets on base. He has RBIs in that lineup in Houston. But I think he's a solid mid to late first round pick. I would probably say more late first round pick because you're going to get a couple of the big hitters, then a couple of the big pitchers, and then you're going to go back. So I would say probably around like 8th, 9th, 10th overall pick is probably where you might start seeing Harper fly off the board. Keeper in Dynasty Leagues, you're obviously going to be all over him. If you don't have him, you should. If you can get a hold of him, get a hold of him. If you're a Phillies fan, you're probably going to want him. I know I already offered a couple of Phillies fans in some of my leagues offers for him. Doubt that I'm going to get him. But yeah, so that's good. It's a good signing for the Phillies. I don't know in real baseball how well it's going to work out, but in fantasy, it's gonna pay off. It's gonna pay off pretty large because he's going to put up numbers in Philly. So today we're going to do today, being as I just did the last video. For this video, we're going to cover the Milwaukee Brewers. We're going to start with the NL Central and get moving on that. Again, as yesterday when I actually did the Nationals to wrap up the NL East, this is another team where all of their talent is at the major league level. They literally have one prospect to speak of. So this is again not going to be a very long video because it's going to be one of those videos where they're either good or they're not. And then the prospect, they have one prospect. He's elite, don't get me wrong. But this is going to be pretty quick. I might actually do another video right after this one about the Cubs and get them all up today. And then we'll see what happens. All right, so let's dive right in. So for the Brewers, for their pitching staff, their pitching staff is really young or unproven or coming back from injuries. So not the type of pitching staff not the type of guys that I want anchoring my pitching staff in fantasy, but a lot of value in the later rounds, a couple of sleepers, guys that I'm looking to pluck in like the 15 to 18 round range where I can get a lot of value for guys like that so that way I can go after more studs, some more batting studs early in my draft. Starting with Jimmy Nelson. He did not pitch in 2018 because he had a shoulder injury. So that's something we want to pay really close attention to in spring training. How's he look? Do they have to shut him down for a week because of shoulder soreness or shoulder tightness? Or is he pitching on a good schedule? Is he throwing, 2 innings in his first start, then 3 innings, then 4, and is he progressing? If you start hearing things like, they had to skip a start for Jimmy Nelson because he had shoulder tightness, then I would avoid him because you don't want pitchers who start to have multiple shoulder injuries. That's the type of guy, especially if you're talking dynasty and keeper leagues, that can really hamstring your team for years to come. In a redraft league, it's a redraft league. You take a shot on a guy in a year, and if it doesn't work out, you just draft someone else next year. So, but when the last time he pitched was in 2017. He went 12-6, pitched 175 innings. He struck out 199 guys, and only walked 48. So there is that 4-to-1 ratio I like to see with strikeouts to walks, and he struck out more than a batter in innings. So he's probably the top of the crop when it comes to the Brewers pitching. He's a guy that I'm going to look toward as long as his spring numbers look good. And it looks like he's going to be healthy. He's definitely a guy that I'm going to be looking for some real good value in the mid to late rounds. Then you have two guys that are going to be battling for the number 5 starter position, and that's Freddie Peralta and Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns pitched out of the bullpen last year. He had 38 innings at the major league level. He's only 24 years old, but he struck out 35 guys, and he had a 1.00 whip. So he was only putting on one batter per inning based on a 9-inning game. So that's really solid. So he's definitely a guy I look for him to maybe win the 4th or 5th starter job outright. So he's a guy, again, that can give you really good value. The other guy's Freddie Peralta. They called him up last year about mid-season, maybe after the All-Star break, and he had some really great starts, and he had some really bad starts. And his biggest problem is walks. He strikes out a good amount of guys. He only pitched like 78 in the 3rd inning last year, and he struck out 99 guys. That's studly. You're looking at there. You're looking at an 11, 12, maybe even, I don't have my calculator in front of me, pardon me, to do the ratio, but you might even be pushing like a 13 K per 9, and that's ridiculous numbers. The problem is for those 99 strikeouts, he walked 40 guys. So he's got control issues. So he's a guy I would definitely look to take a flyer on. I actually own him in a couple of my dynasty leagues. I actually traded for him in one of my dynasty leagues because I see the potential there. So if they can work with him, they can get his control a little bit better. I really think he's got ace potential. He's a boom or bust guy. He's either going to be a breakout this year, or he's going to be a guy that really hurts your team. So, and the team that I added him to is a team that I'm kind of rebuilding. I blew up the team 2 years ago, and I'm rebuilding it right now. So I can afford to take some chances on some, projectable guys, and he's definitely a projectable guy. The biggest name that they have pitching-wise for the Brewers is actually he's not a starter, and he's not even, I don't even know if he's going to be their closer this year. There are rumors that they might make him the closer, but that's Josh Hader. He's a lefty. He's got crazy nasty stuff. Think of like Chris Sale with the arm motion from the Red Sox. He just comes at it, and you don't know where the ball's going when he throws it. But most of the time, they're either swinging and missing, or it's a called strike, because the guy just has electric stuff. His biggest problem fantasy value-wise is he doesn't have a defined role. He's not a starter, and he wasn't their closer last year. They used him a lot as a swingman. They used him a lot situationally. So he's going to give you great whip, he's going to give you great ERA, and he's going to give you strikeouts, which is 3 of the categories that are there. But he's not going to give you a lot of wins, and he's not going to give you a lot of saves. So, and he's not going to give you quality starts. And those are typically in category leagues, the other 3 main categories. So he's not a guy in category leagues that I'm looking to jump on quickly. Now, in points leagues, where you get a lot of points for like per strikeouts and innings pitched, because they use him a lot because he's a reliever, he's got pretty good value. So there's if you're in a points league, he's definitely a guy that I'm looking for as one of the, after all the closers come off the board, he should probably be the top reliever taken after all the closers come off the board. He might even be taken before a couple of the closers. If you have a closer on a really low-end team, like, the closer for the Orioles or the closer for the Marlins, I might take Josh Hader before I take them. Just because opportunities, Hader's going to steal a few wins here and there just because he's pitching in the middle to late innings. If he gets brought in like a 2-1 game where they're losing, and all of a sudden Christian Yelich hits a 2-run home run in the 8th, he's the pitcher of record, he steals a win. So he's got really good fantasy value. Now moving on to the hitters, obviously let's start with the guy I just mentioned, Christian Yelich. He was the National League MVP last year. Here's some funny thing about Christian Yelich. I'm going to give you 2 sets of stats, okay? So from last year, you could have picked a guy who hit 36 home runs, had 22 stolen bases, had 110 RBIs. He batted .297 and had an on-base percentage of .375. Okay, got that? Or you could add a guy who had 39 home runs, so 3 home runs more, 24 stolen bases, so 2 more stolen bases, 79 RBIs, so 31 less RBIs, hit .307, so he hit 10 points higher, and was on base .416 clip. So he had about 40 points higher in on-base percentage. Well, the first guy's stats were Christian Yelich. The second guy's stats were Mike Trout. So if you are in a draft and you're drafting 6 through maybe 8, maybe 9, and you're sitting there lamenting the fact that, oh man, I'm going to watch some guy get Mike Trout, don't worry about it. When it comes to you, if Christian Yelich is available, click on it, because he's going to put up comparable numbers. He was so underrated when he was with the Marlins. I wanted him on the Mets so bad when he was with the Marlins. I remember me and my dad, we talk about baseball all the time, because where I get my love from baseball is from my father. Where I get my stat head type attitude and knowing the stats and knowing the numbers is from my dad. And we would sit there and have talks. I'm like, Dad, the Mets have to get Yelich. They got to trade whatever it can. Like back in the day when we had all the kid pitchers, when Harvey was first coming up, DeGrom and all that, I was like, trade one of them to the Marlins for Christian Yelich, because I want that kid. He had so much potential. I just love the way he swings the bat. I love the way his attitude is at the plate. And he's an absolute stud. I made a trade for him last year in one of my dynasty leagues, and he literally by himself carried me to the championship game. I lost a very tight matchup in that championship game, and excuse me if you see me continuing to look up, but right now I'm actually in the middle of one of my fantasy league drafts, and I'm getting notifications, and I'm waiting to see when it's my turn to draft. Because I don't think any of the guys are watching this video, because they all think I'm crazy for doing these videos, but I'm gonna take just Jared Kelenic from Seattle, who was the kid that the Mets drafted and then traded to Seattle. But anyway, yeah, Yelich is an absolute stud. He is a go-to, click on him guy. In auction drafts, you can get great value, because here again, when the Trout goes off the board, when Arenado goes off the board, when all these Harper goes off the board, Yelich could be sitting there, and if you can get Yelich for $10, $15 cheaper than all these other guys got the, what everyone considers to be the top rung of players, you just save $15 for another position, and you're going to get comparable numbers to what these other guys are putting up. So it's going to be really interesting this year to see what he does to build off that MVP year, and to see if he can take that next step and go even higher with the numbers and enter the truly, truly elite players in the game. After that, Jesus Aguilar, breakout player last year at first base. Last year they thought Eric Thames was going to be their everyday first baseman, and Jesus Aguilar came in and just started tearing the cover off the ball. He was a find. I picked him up on waivers in a couple of leagues last year. That's how unknown he was. Right at the beginning of his hot streak, I saw him and I was like, oh, let me take a flyer on him, and he wound up anchoring my lineup for the rest of the season. So he's a guy, I like him a lot. Now, it's going to be his second full-time year in the league, so it's going to see if the pitchers have a book on him now, see if he hits that little bit of the sophomore slump. So, he's a guy that I'm going to try and draft high in redraft leagues, because I think I'm going to be looking at him probably in the first 5-6 first basemen to come off the board. So I'm definitely going to be giving him a high draft value. In auction leagues, I'd probably put him at about a $20, $25 value, maybe a little bit more. In keeper leagues, you're keeping him. In dynasty leagues, if he's available, go get him. And if someone's looking to trade him, I'd give up quite a bit to get him. Then there are big free agent signing of the offseason. Well, they had two good free agent signings. One was a re-sign, and one is a new player to come in. The first one is the player that they're bringing in. They're bringing in Yasmani Grandal from LA. He played with LA last year, but LA has a couple of real good stud catching prospects who I'll get into when we get into the NL West. So they could afford to not re-sign Grandal, and he signed with the Brewers. The U, Grandal, absolutely. And he's gonna really improve the catcher position there. He can put up some really good numbers. He's got power numbers. This is gonna be a power hitting lineup. Like I said, I don't play a lot of daily fantasy, but they're gonna be a very popular stack in daily fantasy on a daily basis, just because you got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who are going to be in that lineup virtually every day who can go deep at any time. So it's good. That's going to be a fun lineup to watch all year. I actually have one dynasty team where I have 4 of them. I have Yelich, I have Moustakas, I have Aguilar, and I have Shaw. So that's going to be a really fun lineup to watch this year. I'm going to have a good time watching Milwaukee. I'm going to get a lot of usage with my MLB TV account watching some of their games this year. Grandal's got good power. Plus, he plays every day. The biggest knock on him is his playoffs performance, but we don't care about that because the playoffs are in the regular season. He's a good regular season performer, so oh well. After that, you got the returning guy, Mike Moustakas. Now, Mike Moustakas, if you guys watched my video the other day, I talked about how Mike Moustakas signed, and I talked about the news around Mike Moustakas. The news around Mike Moustakas is that he's going to be the everyday second baseman for the Brewers. They're going to actually let Travis Shaw play third this year. When they traded for Moustakas last year when he came over from Kansas City, they kept him at third base, and they shifted Shaw to second. Well, now Moustakas is going to shift to second. He's going to start the year in spring training playing second base. And Shaw, because he's a plus defender at third base, they're going to keep him in his more natural position. This is great for fantasy this year. Because Mike Moustakas, that means most leagues, you need to play like 10, 15, 20 games at a position to gain eligibility. This means by the end of April, Moustakas is going to be dual eligible at both third and second, or middle infield and corner infield. So that's amazing. That boosts his value tremendously, because second base, there's not too many true power hitters at second base, and I mean Moose, he hits almost 30 home runs a year, so there's a real good chance that he's going to be the biggest home run hitting total of any second baseman in the major leagues this year. So if you can get your hands on him, he is going to be immensely valuable. And if you have people in your league who don't know he's going to be a second baseman, that's great. Draft him, even if you got to stash him in your utility spot for a couple of weeks until he gains eligibility, then you can pop him into second base and you are good. So he's definitely a guy I am looking to take very high this year. I would spend good money on an auction draft. Keeper, I'm absolutely keeping him. Dynasty, for sure, I would absolutely trade a lot to get him. I wouldn't move him unless it was for a king's ransom. So I really am high on Moose this year. Travis Shaw, we'll get right into him. Good power hitting third baseman. I don't know what Boston was thinking when they traded him. They wanted to make room for Rafael Devers. I get it, but I am still not sold on Devers, and I think they would have been better off trading Devers to a team that was looking for prospects and keeping Shaw, because Shaw is he's a beast. He is a beast, and that's what I mean when I say this lineup is just stud after stud after stud. Especially when it comes to power. There is no pitching around anybody in this lineup. And I haven't even gotten to the last two guys, the other two outfielders yet. I haven't even gotten to Ryan Braun and Lorenzo Cain. I mean, Lorenzo Cain was if he wasn't a 2020 guy, he was real close to it last year. He hits for a decent average. He hits for a little bit of power. He can steal you some bags. He plays great defense, so he's going to play every day. So, you know, he's definitely a guy that you want to own. I just traded for Ryan Braun in a league because I really think he's, the steroid stuff is what it was back in the day when he had it. Ever since he came back from the steroid stuff, though, he's been very consistent, right around 20 home runs a year, right around 80 RBIs. He's going to hit around 280. He's just really steady. Again, the U. So, yeah, they came from the University of Miami. It's funny how all these steroid guys came from the University of Miami. Biogenesis, A-Rod. Yeah, funny, right? So yeah, that pretty much runs through all their fantasy relevant guys at the major league level. Now, the only guy in the minors who is anywhere near fantasy relevant, and he definitely is, he's a stud in waiting. He might even be up this year. If you notice, I haven't mentioned anything about the second base position. It was one of the only positions I did not cover with the Brewers, and that's because they have a guy in waiting. His name is Keston Hiura. It's either Hiura or Hiura. I haven't seen too much on him on the shows, so I don't know the exact pronunciation, but just know he's good. Last year he had 142 hits. Of those, like 45 of them were extra base hits. He hit 293. He had a 357 on base percentage. He's the number 20 prospect overall, and he's the number 1 second base prospect in baseball, based on MLB.com, on their top prospect list. So he's really solid. He's really going to be a good one if he can come up and show he can hit major league pitching. He plays pretty good defense, so he'll get a good shot. So if you are in prospect drafts, he's definitely a guy who's, if he's not taken already, because he was drafted last year, if he isn't taken yet, the guys you're playing a very soft league, and please send me an invite to play in it. In redraft leagues, he might get a look this year. It might be a late season call-up, so he might be a waiver wire ad as opposed to a guy you're going to spend the draft pick on. Unless you just got lucky and you just drafted a bunch of studs and you can fill your bench with some prospects and guys who might come up in the second half of the year, then I might take a fly on him. But other than that, he might be more of a waiver wire pick. Auction leagues, I'm probably not spending more than $1 or $2 on him just because I don't know how much he's going to give me this year. Keeper leagues, you want him. Like I said, dynasty leagues, he better be on a roster already. Otherwise, please send me an invite. So yeah, that wraps up Milwaukee. I'm going to try and do the Cubs tonight. If I can't, I will probably do them at the beginning of next week. So, as always, like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you guys want to see and hear, and I will check you guys out later.